Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second installment of ResMan's Compliance Podcast. This is episode 2. Just to let you know, we record these things in advance, so while it is cocktails and compliance, we are at happy hour to record this. And, of course, we are joined by our compliance experts, Janel Ganim and Rue Fox. They're standing by. Before we do introductions, we probably need to introduce the cocktail for the day. We'll go to our special guest, Janel. Janel, what's the cocktail over there?
So today it's Santa Fe Brewing Company's Imperial Java Stout. It's like some really delicious coffee with a kick.
Excellent. Have you had a sip of it yet?
I've had a few sips, Dennis.
A few. Is it good?
It's delicious.
Okay. Excellent. Rue, you have the same cocktail over there?
I do have the same cocktail over here. It's a fantastic coffee stout.
Cheers, Rue.
Furthering my beer education.
I decided to go a different route this time. I'm rocking the Sam Adams Cherry Wheat. Cherry Wheat, if anyone wants to try that.
Is this Sam Adams because you're from Boston?
I went to school in Boston, but I'm not from Boston.
Close enough.
Yeah. So good. We've introduced the cocktails. We're about to get to compliance, but very quickly, we are ResMan Property Management Software. We're the fastest growing property management software provider out there. We encourage everyone and invite everyone to love their software. So contact us to find out more about how you can master affordable housing compliance with ResMan Property Management Software. All right, and as I've said, special guest here, Janel Ganim. This is your second appearance on the Cocktails and Compliance. You're like a founding member.
I'm 2 for 2. Right? I'm excited.
2 for 2. So Janel, of course, you know her, extremely well connected, worked in affordable housing industry for over 20 years. Janel is involved in multiple organizations, including serving as the vice chair of the Affiliates Committee for NAMA. Participating in HUD working groups to create TRACS industry specifications. I think we'll be getting to that agenda item in this podcast. Co-authoring a proposal for HUD to allow electronic signatures and electronic storage. And she is certified, lots of certifications, certified occupancy specialist and tax credit specialist designations. Janel is joining us as a guest from RightSource Compliance, a consulting firm headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota. How's that flight treating you these days?
It's not too bad.
It's not bad, right?
It's not snowing yet, so it's fantastic.
Not snowing, yeah, so you're doing great. That's a good flight. Cool. Rue, our very own Rue Fox. Rue is a solutions engineer for us. Rue also has approaching 20 years of, is it 20 years?
It's more than 20 years.
20 years? We'll call it 20 years.
I like approaching better.
Yeah, approaching's good, right? 20 years focused on affordable housing. Rue is one of the most networked individuals I've ever come across in my career. It seems like everybody knows Rue. She's a member of NAMA and chairs the Affordable 100 committee for them. Spent 4 years working in the property management segment of the industry for a developer and owner, and is very, very active in the state and regional AMAs. Also certified. Rue holds several certifications. Rue is a certified professional of occupancy and has her specialist in housing credit management certifications. Just a quick personal note about these great ladies. Janel likes pina coladas and getting caught in the rain. And of course, Rue, as mentioned last time, loves chocolate, beaches, and palm trees. So those two things kind of sometimes intersect in life, don't they? Like getting caught in the rain and beaches and palm trees. I mean,
and pina coladas. Don't leave that out.
Yeah, good. All right, the niceties are out of the way. Take a big sip, because here we are getting into the topics. So building upon our last episode, so TRACS 203A, Janel, you want to take this one? What does 203A change? Walk me from the start of this thing.
So, Dennis, there are a lot of things coming in 203A, but the good news is it's a smaller release than the last update, which was 202D. The biggest things that you're going to see here are things like expanded race and ethnicity categories, We have some additional data collection for repayment agreements. Those have been a little tricky in the industry, and HUD has decided they would like some more information to go along with those. And along with that information is going to be some new baselines that HUD wants to be able to collect that information as soon as people make that switch to the new version. There are some new FSS escrow accounting. You know, we like our acronyms. So
Lots of acronyms.
that's Family Self-Sufficiency. That's a program that HUD wants to start tracking, and they want to track those escrow deposits and withdrawals. And I think one of the biggest things that's coming in 203A, we talked about RAD conversions and how popular those are in our last podcast. And so there are a lot of updates that have to be made to the Trax database system to collect a lot of that data.
I actually have a question for Janel. Back to the FSS, do you have to be, how do you actually get involved in FSS? Do you know? Do you have to sign up for it, or does HUD select you to participate in that? Okay.
That's a stumper of a question there, I guess. Huh?
Jesus, Rue, we just got started. It is a
Sorry about that, Janel.
Thanks, Rue. It is a public housing program, so I think as you're starting to see more of the public housing tenants convert over to RAD, you're going to start seeing a lot of that escrow. It is something that's on a tenant basis, on a household basis. I don't actually know the details of how you get started into that program.
That's actually really makes sense, though, because every person that I feel like I've ever had a conversation about FSS with is somehow either directly employed by a housing authority or works closely with housing authorities. So that makes sense.
So the current status of the release is that we are waiting on OMB approval of forms. You're going to see changes to things like the 5.9, the 5.9A, the voucher forms, particularly the Part 6, where we're collecting the additional information for repayment agreements. And you'll also see new fields for FSS, escrow accounting. There are special claims changes on those forms and updates to the race and ethnicity forms as well to include those new categories.
And so those are all in 202A.
203A. We're cutting her off.
Rue just face palmed. She's like, I knew that. I knew that.
That's actually what I meant. Sorry.
Yeah, I knew exactly what you meant, Rue. Yes, so those changes to the forms will come as part of that packet for 203A. There is still some discussion on the implementation deadline for this. Rue just rolled her eyes because we've talked about this implementation for well over a year now. There's probably something in Vegas. You could probably put odds on this. I'm just saying.
It's a bookmaker's
Sports
paradise.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Again, the dates are contingent on the OMB approval of the forms, but right now what the industry is proposing is an implementation start date of February 1st, 2019, and the cutoff being June 30th of 2019. And so what that means is anywhere between those two dates, you can work with your software vendor to say that you are ready to switch over to this new Trax version. And during that transition time, HUD or contract administrators will accept Trax files that are in either version up until that cutoff date.
That's good. Rue, let's understand how this fits into the context of the ResMan product. Are we able to support this?
We are able to support this currently. What I would say is, while it sounds like there's a lot of changes for the end user, there's a whole lot of changes in the software programming. And so that actually should make the end user experience easier.
Very cool. Janel, do I have permission to move on to 203B?
Please proceed.
Okay, so we did hear 203B, that release. So question is, has the industry actually started working on that?
Yes, which seems kind of crazy to talk about something when we haven't even got the next one pushed out the door. But at some point, there is a cutoff on the industry specifications. So things that didn't make the cut for 203A are now actively being worked as part of the 203B update. I can tell you this release is going to be larger than 203A. So I guess it's a good thing we're going to start now because we won't see it until probably 2020 at the earliest. So it
Or
gives us,
2025.
if we were placing bets, I'm just saying. But you should expect some really large changes in the functionality. There are two big ones coming. One is a delete function that allows you to submit a tracks file to delete a specific certification that's there. So it could be that you submitted a certain error, or maybe you need to change the effective date, or maybe you just need to remove a cert that's got bad data. But the other big thing that's coming, and it kind of goes back to some of the things that we've talked about before with disaster efforts, in that HUD wants to be able to track what that available unit count looks like, so that in the event of a disaster, they know that they can relocate tenants to available housing that's close by. So we will start to see HUD collecting turnover data, so make-ready information, things like that, and they will start to collect some wait list information so that they have it in the event of any emergencies.
So are you talking about that waitlist information then is going to need to be actually accessed through their software?
Probably so. They're still talking through how all of that information is going to work and how do you collect preferences and what types of things are they looking for. But at bare minimum, I would expect that properties are going to start submitting their turnover data so that HUD has a very accurate count of the unit vacancy at any time.
Wow.
That makes perfect sense with all of the issues with the recent hurricanes and people not being able to find housing.
Yep.
So the next topic on the list is also revisited from, I think, our last episode, or at least related. Let's talk TLS compliance for right now. So this is a security protocol. For the audience that might be tuning in for the first time, I was really tickled that I flattered our compliance experts with my knowledge of what the acronym NIST meant.
And I haven't forgotten it since.
Really? You haven't forgotten the fact that I remembered it or what the acronym means?
Right.
All the above. One of the above.
Everything you said.
That is great. Well, I'm flattered. I'm flattered to actually participate in this conversation. But yeah, so TLS compliance, this is a security protocol for document storage. So, tell us again what it is. There's a deadline, I understand. How do people need to be ready for this thing? What are the pros and cons?
So there is a deadline for your software providers to be ready for that, and I believe it's October 11th. Sorry, Janel just corrected me. It's October 20th. That's an extension of an earlier deadline of September the 3rd. And just to let you know, we are currently ready for that.
ResMan
is currently ready for that. What that is a replacement of secure socket layers. And so when you see SSL in your browser, that's what this is actually required by the Department of Homeland Security. And so this is a stronger level of encryption in preparation for electronic document storage and security.
Awesome. And the stuff that's on these documents is personally identifiable information about tenants. What else? Anything else on there? Is there like...
There is household demographics. There is all sorts of information.
There's financial data, so they're wanting to protect that as well. So
there's medical information,
right?
And so HIPAA laws come into that, and so there's a lot of information on those pieces of paper.
And then what's the the panic level on this particular topic? Is this hot? Is this people are feeling in control, or is there a lot of help needed here?
Well, I can't really speak to the other vendors. It's a hot topic in preparation for accepting electronic signature and being able to store your documents electronically, and it is mandated by HUD. And so it's a big thing if you're going to participate in the electronic document storage.
Well, and it goes beyond that. I mean, just HUD is required to do this. Again, Department of Homeland Security and Dennis's friends at NIST said that we had to make this change. In terms of is it hot, I will tell you not every vendor was ready for that original September 3rd deadline. And so that's why it ended up getting pushed back. So yes, it's hot, but HUD actually had to go back to Homeland Security and say, because of, our industry partners aren't ready, we have to push this deadline back.
Gotcha. So it was the vendor's fault.
Oh, boy.
Was it kind of like the vendor's fault? I mean, that sounds like it was the vendor's fault.
Not everyone was ready.
Not everyone was ready. Okay.
You might actually check with your provider to find out what the status is of where they are with this requirement.
Right. And in terms of end users, there's really nothing for them to do. It's really all in the back end for the software vendors.
Always the most solid advice, Rue. So unbiased, just objective, solid advice.
Thank you, Dennis.
Terrific. Okay, so I guess continuing on the topic of security, next topic is electronic signatures.
Whoop, whoop. That's my favorite.
That's Janel's favorite.
Seems like she might know a little bit of something about that.
Yeah, I think, audience, if you don't know Janel, you definitely want to get in touch. Obviously, one of the foremost experts in this topic in our industry. So, Janel, we talked about this in our last episode. What's new? Here we are, almost 2 months later. What's going on with e-cig?
So it is slowly making its way through the approval process at HUD. It's been an inter-office review. It's moved to pre-departmental clearance, which is awesome. Once that clears, it'll be made public for comments. That's generally about a 30-day period. And the goal is still to get the notice published by the end of this year. One thing that I will say, I've had people ask me, well, do I expect the comment period to delay this? And, is it going to totally derail this effort? And I don't really think so. That's why it spends so much time in its departmental clearance. It goes through the policy group at HUD. It goes through their legal counsel. It goes through the Office of Inspector General. So they're vetting it for any conflicts with existing policy, any legal issues, things like that. So I don't expect public comments to hold up the notice at all.
Awesome. Is the release of this notice in any way tied to 203A?
That's a great question, Dennis, and that's probably the second thing that I get asked. And after the timeline of this actually being finalized, and no, not at all. There is nothing in it that is related to track, so it's not tied to the 203A release. So back to our sports book, if we don't make it in that time frame that we talked about, electronic signature could theoretically go first.
Anything to add there, Rue?
That is great news, and we are very excited for that day to finally get here. The one thing that I have kind of learned a little bit of since our last conversation on this is that some of the HFAs, such as TDHCA, does already have in place a set of requirements. And so I would put it on the users out there to reach out to your HFA, find out if they have already a set of requirements in place and what those may be, and then get with your software provider to ensure that those are all in place.
Very cool.
There would, as with everything else, there won't be a mandate that this has to be done, but certainly there's many reasons that you would want to go ahead and take advantage of this once it is being accepted.
Terrific. And our next topic is the FAST Act, which is the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act. It seems kind of funny to be talking about a transportation act in the world and industry of affordable housing. So what is the FAST Act?
So it is interesting that when a piece of legislation gets introduced, there's some little nugget in there that is a little misleading and doesn't seem to tie into whatever the name of the legislation is. And that's what happened in this case. So the part that is applicable to affordable housing deals with households where 90% of their income is from a fixed source. So people who are receiving Social Security or VA disability or some kind of fixed pension aren't required to have that information verified every year at an annual recertification. So what that means is when it's verified, then on the second and third years after that, the site really gets to skip that piece and say, we'll circle back around to you basically in year 4 then after the certification. The one thing that I think is interesting here is this is already in play. This is going on in properties across the country, although we've seen a really low adoption rate because people think, oh, it's difficult and I don't know how to track this or, whatever. But it's really as simple as putting something on the top of your verification form that says, I'm in year X of my certification. You've got to have a piece of paper to either verify the income itself, or you could verify that I don't have to follow up and verify this information. So it's really not that difficult. So I would love to see more people adopt it. It's really a way to save some time on site and make that certification process easier.
Rue, you're shaking your head.
There was just a lot there, and I was trying to read
yeah.
a piece of paper and learn about it while she was talking.
I know. It's amazing. I have to say, I've never met two people who have this degree of expertise on topics that are so complex and so complicated. So, I hope our audience for this grows, because this is a very, very unique kind of thing we're doing for the industry here. So very cool. Next topic, if we're ready to move on, permission to move on to the next topic?
Permission granted.
Yes. Here we are. I think this is the final topic of the day.
I know. Do you need a sip? Are you good?
Oh, I do. I need a sip. Do we all
Pause
need a
for
sip?
sip.
Cheers.
Pause for a sip. Cheers.
All right. So here we are. The last topic of the afternoon here is what we're calling HOTMA.
Hot mess.
Hot mess.
Not that
was
it's really a
Fox.
hot mess. It just makes me think of hot mess every time I hear HOTMA.
Right.
There's a whole lot rolled into it, so
That was a planned one, right? A planned gag. HOTMA. I think this is from my notes here, the Housing Opportunity Through Modernization Act of 2016.
which is exciting because it actually says housing in the act
Yeah.
itself,
Housing, that's right.
which is nice. It kind of clues you in that we're going to talk about some changes to housing.
That's awesome. So take it away. What is it? How is it affecting affordable housing?
So the interesting thing is it's not affecting affordable housing yet, because there's a provision in this legislation that says it has to take place on the first of a calendar year. And it does involve some tracks changes, which means we could see it in our latest update 203B that we've been talking about. Honestly, what it means is at the very earliest, we'll see these changes in 2020. And if we miss that window for some reason, guess what? We push back to 2021. There are actually quite a few things that are involved in this. So those of you who have been in the industry a really long time, you may be excited to see some of these things. But I will tell you from a software vendor perspective, it definitely means there's a little more logic that's involved to code for these changes, because where you're used to putting in a set amount for things like a dependent allowance or an elderly allowance, you now have to allow for COLA increases as well.
What's a COLA?
Cost of living adjustment.
Oh. I was thinking of a Diet Coke.
I resisted the urge to say Coca-Cola.
Were you being facetious? Did you actually know what cola meant? And you were just kind
knows.
of course.
She's not just
I know.
pretty,
She
she's smart.
played it off really well, though. It was very finely acted.
Yeah, she's very smart. So, like I said, the dependent deduction, it'll stay at $480, but it is subject to future COLA changes, which means it could be some random amount depending on the year. And so, again, from a software perspective, you've got to think about effective dates of when that changes and be able to store that value and know that it's going to change from time to time. In regards to calculations, right now there's a threshold for disability and medical deductions that's at 3% of annual income. That moves to 10%. P.S. It's also subject to COLA, because why not? The elderly deduction is going to change from $400 to $525, and guess what? It's also subject to COLA. I was waiting for you to just.
Oh, I just say
She was
what?
trying to cue you in.
I was teeing it up for you.
I know. I'm off the mark here today.
I don't have any more COLA things, so I'm sorry. one of the ones that I love, the calculation right now for imputed assets, that cap is at $5,000, and it seems like such a minuscule amount that I can't tell you how many people have said, I don't know why I'm calculating this ridiculous amount because I never use it. Well, for those of you that hate calculating that threshold just went from $5,000 to $50,000 as part of this change.
But when you say just went, that means will be effective with this change, right?
Correct. Not just
Not
now.
today.
I meant just went in 2020 or 2021. Another thing that goes along with that, there are some optional eligibility rules surrounding households that have certain assets that exceed $100,000. That one's been fairly hotly debated in the industry, so it's an optional rule. So you'll see some things like a flag, like a do not check eligibility or eligibility waiver, something like that is my guess when that gets implemented. But one of the things that's actually really interesting too is they've made some provisions based on some current proposals to Congress about changing the value of the Section 8 minimum rent amount and potentially eliminating utility reimbursements. They want to go ahead. Rue's eyes just got really, really big. Everybody hates utility reimbursements.
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal. So software vendors are being asked to allow for future changes in calculating rents, calculating minimum rents, and potentially eliminating a utility reimbursement, which is a big deal. And again, everything I said kind of has this contingency, and so you've got to look at effective dates and COLA dates, and you're not just storing one amount now for your calculations. You've got to allow for some additional complexity, which is going to be interesting for the sites, too, to know what the value is that they're supposed to use.
Well, it sounds like HOTMA is going to add to what you said was already going to be a pretty big slate of changes for Tracks 203B.
Yeah, and that's where I'm saying it's going to be a much, much larger release than 203A. Between that, the delete functionality, the wait list, the unit turnover, it'll be a very large release.
So 2025.
If you were a betting person.
You seem to be talking about the sports book a lot.
You have it on your wall out there. It says Marketing Sportsbook.
It's true. That's true. Can we?
It was subliminal. Thank you. It did its job. It soaked right in. Good marketing there.
So before we wrap up today, by the way, everyone in the audience, please feel free to write into us. You know how to reach us, myresman.com. Contact us form at the bottom. If you have a question for Janel, we'll be happy to refer that. Janel, tell them how they can reach you independently.
You can reach me at jganim at rightsourcecompliance.com.
Ganim is G-A-N.
N as in Nancy, I-M as in Mary.
M as in Mary. Good.
And please, if you guys are not familiar with what RightSource does, please go out and take a look at their website. They offer a whole lot of services to the affordable housing industry that you guys can maybe take advantage of.
Terrific. Shall we call that a day?
Let's do it.
All right.
Sounds like it.
All right. Thanks, ladies. Thanks, audience. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.